Chapter 30. Off Again. The next day, Huan led Oran and I away from our friends in the beautiful village of Cielo. This time, as we walked through the jungle, there was no fear. Both Oran and I were too busy thinking about what would happen to us next. Huan had agreed to lead us to the great city of Piku, from where we could hopefully find transportation to Sade. It had been hard to say goodbye to our friends, and especially Elsie. He was like a son to both of us, and we needed to know that he would be happy and safe there in Og. It was also hard to say goodbye to Sigund. He was like a part of Miram that had always remained with me. Now he would be gone. Gomo, who had also remained, had become like one of the family, and we had hoped that he too could find happiness in Silo. We climbed the hill that once, just a few days before, marked a happy reunion. Now we were leaving, and would probably never see these people again. Rhea had told us that the earth changes were coming soon, and that time was of the essence. We must get to Sade to bury the last of the records. It had been the dream of both Miram and Ituitude to see the records buried in Sade. They had contributed a major part in the construction of what had been done in that country for the purpose of housing the records for possibly centuries. Also, our friend ATLATIA, I was sure, was waiting for us. We couldn't let him down. We couldn't stay in Silo. It was our time to move on. Huan led us to Agar, where we spent the night before going to Pichu. The people of his village greeted us with more warmth this time. Huan told them of our friends and of their village. The people of Agar were simple folk and were happy to see others happy. However, they couldn't understand why we were leaving them. We tried to explain to them about the records and our friends in Sade, but they never would understand their importance. The next morning, Huan borrowed 3 horses for us for the trip to Piku. This was going to be a new experience for us. I was accustomed to someone riding on me, not me riding on someone else. The horses were gentle and seemed to know that Oran and I were very familiar with them. We're not very familiar with them. They didn't fuss when we mounted them. Huan left us for a moment while we loaded a donkey with the supplies. When he returned, he found Oran sitting on the ground and me laughing. Oran's horse had no intention of taking his directions, so when he decided to give him a little kick, he bolted up, throwing Oran in the dirt. Huan found it funny too. He retrieved Oran's horse and then gave him some quick instructions on how to ride. According to Huan, we had about a 3 days ride ahead of us. He said that we had better get used to being on the horse. Personally, I would have preferred to walk. I was not the best horseman either. However, my horse was more tolerant than Oran's. We proceeded toward the mountains to our east. The land was rocky and barren as we left the jungle area. Huan told us that we would be traveling through beautiful woods in another day or so. It was interesting to see each variety in the landscape. The air was brisk and fresh here. No longer were we at the heat of the jungle, but the pleasant air of the mountains. Occasionally we would see a stream trickling out of the hills and would stop for a refreshing drink of cold mountain water. It was invigorating. The first night we were tired. The cool air mixed without anxiety of the trip before us was a combination that put us to sleep almost the instant we had finished our dinner. The next morning we awoke to a very unexpected surprise. I was the first to rise. I pulled off my blanket and looked over at the fire, and for a moment I thought I was still dreaming. I got up and walked closer to get a better look. With their backs to me were Huan and Elchi. I was torn between anger and happiness to see him. "How did you get here?" I scolded Elchi. "The same way you did. Ride. Although a bit better, I might add," Elchi quipped. Huan helped himself. He couldn't bear to let you go alone, and his ankle was good enough to travel. He insisted that by staying out of sight until we were far enough away that you couldn't make him turn back. What could we say? Oran must have been awakened by our voices and suddenly appeared next to us. "I can't believe you did this," he said in anger, but then he's changed his tune and hugged Elchi. "But I'm glad you did. I've already missed you." He put his arm around Elchi. "We forget what a man you are now. I had to come. I know that you both may not regard me as such, but I feel like I'm part of the team that put the records together. I just want to see the last one buried in Sade. I also want to see Sade because of Pizarro. I know that he loved it there. I just wanted to see it." Both Oran and I were choked up. How could we have been so blind? He had indeed helped us with the records. We had always known how much they meant to him. How could we have been so selfish? I'm sorry, Elchie. Please forgive us. Oren asked him. We're getting old and stupid. I would like to go on with you if you'll let me. Huon expressed his feelings to us. I can help you here in Og since I'm a native and you may need more help than you think when you leave here. You know the journey may be dangerous. We cannot promise anything. I understand, Huon replied to Oron. Well, it looks like we have a team here, I said. Deep down, I was glad that the young men, both in their 20s now, would be joining us. I didn't anticipate this to be an easy trip, and Elchie always was very clever, and Huon appeared to have a lot of experience with adventures, and that's where we were going, on another adventure. We ate breakfast and packed our horses and donkey. Elchie appeared to be a natural horseman, quite unlike Oron and myself. We rode out across the brown rocky grounds towards the green mountains ahead of us. The ride seemed long, and mountains didn't appear to go much closer. It wasn't until the sun was setting that we were even close to the forest. We decided to camp for the night. As we started our fire and tended to our animals, we could hear howls coming from the forest. What's that? They are wolves, Huon told me. As long as we keep our fire going, we will be safe. I had never seen a wolf, and I hoped that I wouldn't see one that night. Oron also expressed the same desire. Of course, Elchie, ready for another and anything different, wanted them to approach the campsite. Luckily, they never showed, and I can attest to it. I was awake the whole night listening to them. The next day, we rode out into the forest. It was beautiful and reminded me of home. When Oren and I were kids, I used to fly him to the forest just north of Alta. It was very similar. Oren and I were getting used to the horses and were riding much better. We were able to keep up with our younger counterparts. As we rode on, Oren told stories of forest fairies, which entertained us all. It was a pleasant day. We had been lucky so far. The clouds that hung so dark and ominously over us never let loose a drop. We stopped for rest and lunch. No sooner had we started to eat when a great storm broke loose. We had no shelter except for the trees, but the rain came down in such torrents that we all got drenched. We tried to get a fire going to keep us warm, if not dry, but it was useless. It kept going out. There was nothing we could do except keep riding. We were going to be wet for one way or another. Huon remembered that there might be some small villages ahead and suggested that we ride as fast as we could to find them. We mounted quickly and took off with haste towards the east. We rode for over an hour. There appeared to be no let-up on the weather. It seemed to be getting colder, and extra clothes we did have were drenched. We were cold and wet. It was dark and dreary out as well. We continued on till there was a break in the forest. Below was a valley and what appeared to be a small village. When we saw the lights, we screamed with excitement. We bolted towards the village as if fire was at our heels. Even Oren and I, who were a little unsteady in the saddle, rode confidently into this community. When we got within the limits of the village, Huon suggested that he go ahead and see if he could find shelter. We waited a few minutes, our hair dripping flat to our head. It wasn't long and Huon was back to show us where we and our animals could find shelter. There was a shed with other animals inside just ahead to the right. It was there that we were directed to go. After we had unloaded our animals, we were invited by the owner of the shed to come into his home where we could dry ourselves. I never felt anything as good as that fire. I was chilled to the bone. So was everyone else. The owner's wife was kind enough to give us some hot soup to help us ward off the chill. She also gave us some blankets for us to wrap ourselves in so that we could remove and dry our clothes properly. They were very nice people. But they're only able to converse with Huon in Augean. We told them that we were on our way to Piku and would be looking for transportation to Sade. The man had never heard of Sade, and probably it didn't concern him. His world was what we saw around us, and he didn't seem to care to know anything else. Even what information about Pico he could give us was less than Huon already knew. We accepted his and his wife's hospitality thankfully, and told them that we would be on our way when we were able to find a break in the weather. Oren didn't look well and was sneezing badly. I suspected that his drenching had affected him more than the rest of us. He shrugged it off and said that he was fine, and that as soon as we got the chill out of the bones, that he'd be all right. The couple let us spend the night on the floor in front of the fireplace. I dropped off quickly, but was wakened by the shivers of Oron. He was sweating profusely as well. I was quite concerned for his welfare. I woke Elchie and Huon and asked Huon if he knew what we could do for him. I had never encountered such a thing, and I didn't know what I could do for my friend. Oren kept telling us that he couldn't get warm, but he assured us that once he was, that he'd be all right. No matter how many blankets we put on him, he couldn't warm up. I was scared. What if this was something really serious? Would we have to turn around and go back to Silo for help? That was now over 2 days away. I didn't know what to do. The wife apparently had heard our talking and came out to see what was wrong. She told Huon that she would make a home remedy for such ailments. It was a concoction of herbs which she prepared over the fire. She told Huon that she had seen this before and felt that she could help Oron. The medicine was cooked, and that carefully the woman gave Oron a spoon of it. It must have tasted bad for the look on his face, but it also must have done some kind of sedative in it, because it put him to sleep within minutes. She said sleep was good. We all fell off to sleep and weren't awakened until the owner made us aware that the rain had stopped and that it was morning. Oron woke up too. He appeared to be doing much better thanks to the woman's remedy. The man was anxious to go off to work, and since Oron was looking better, he hinted to Huon that we should be off to Piku. We loaded the horses in the donkey and mounted up again. Oron still seemed weak. We didn't push him to move any faster than he was able. He insisted that he was all right and that we all should stop worrying. He said that he just had a heavy chill and that was it. We knew that we could make it to Piku the day from what Huon had told us. It was just beyond the next ridge, and we could be there by nightfall. We made our way along the muddy road that led from the village to Piku. We passed a few of the local people off to do their daily chores, but were hardly given any attention. The day still appeared dark and dreary. In fact, when we started out, there was a great fog that enveloped the mountain before us. Still cold out, and we wore a warm wrap. Every once in a while, I would hear a cough or sneeze from Oron. When I asked him how he was, he would say, "I'm fine." We rode up the mountain into the fog. It was so thick that we had to stay very close together and rope the donkey to two of us so as not to lose him. As we got further up the ridge, the fog began to break. We could see that we were still on the road and were headed in the right direction. When I turned to look back to Oron, he was sitting slumped in his saddle. It worried me. When I said something, he straightened up and told me that he was just tired. But when I suggested that we stop and rest, he would not. He insisted that we go to Pico by nightfall. As we were riding up the ridge, the clouds that had hung so close decided to descend more of its rain on us. Again, we all got very wet. This time we had nowhere but onward to go. We decided to just keep riding because we were only a few hours away from Piku. We really had no choice. I could see that this rain was not going to help Oron. He looked and sounded worse and worse, coughing harshly as we rode along. We got to the top of the ridge, and through the clouds we could see Piku. I knew it wouldn't be long then. The sight of the city gave us all some hope. Even Oron smiled. We rode faster and faster down the other side of the city. Suddenly I noticed that Oron wasn't with us. I looked back and saw his horse with him lying on the ground at his feet. I called for the others. We had to do something. We still were at least an hour's ride from the city, and we couldn't stop in the rain with him in this condition. He was barely conscious, but he kept insisting he was all right. He was far from that. Huon suggested that Oron ride with him on his horse, and we could tie his horse to the donkey. Oron put up a fuss, but soon he was sitting on Huon's horse in front of Huon. I could see his head drop every once in a while. I had never seen him look so bad. I had a terrible feeling. As soon as we reached an inhabited area, we stopped and asked for shelter, and also a physician. There were none close by, so Huon rode on to bring one back to us while we waited in an animal shelter. Elchi went out and found a generous soul who gave him some hot tea for a drink. The hot tea seemed to help Oron a little, but he looked very bad. I sat in a pile of hay with my friend's head in my lap. We covered him with a dry blanket we found in the shed, but he was drenched to the skin. I decided that he had to take those clothes off, so I undressed him and wrapped him in the blanket, hoping that his warmth with the tea would help him get over this thing. As he lay resting on my lap, suddenly he whispered, "Ituitude is waiting for me. It's up to you now." I was sure he was delirious. I couldn't accept it. "No," I said. "No." As his eyes closed, I could feel my friend's soul leave his body. I couldn't believe it. Not him. Not then. Elchi sat staring at us, not able to speak. When Huon returned with the physician, I was still holding my friend. I didn't want to let go. I didn't want him to leave me, but it was too late. He was gone.